Welcome to Scarey, Horror in the Heartland is one of 10 terrifying haunted houses at this year's Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando. Since 1991, the Haunt event has brought intellectual property-based houses, as well as original storylines. Introducing the town of Carey, Ohio. Being centered around the real-life town, bad things happen. If the name sounds familiar, you are not mistaken. The story of this house actually stretches back as far as 2008. But why does Universal love to use this mysterious town in their haunt event? What is this mysterious place in the outskirts of nowhere? What is Scarey, Ohio? It seems as though uncovering the mystery of this place will require us to dive a little deeper.
Just a fool in love with you.
Our journey begins. The village of Carey in Wyandotte County was founded in 1843, being named after Judge John Carey. But why has this town been chosen to play a role in Horror Nights time and time again? Well, its story is quite interesting. It actually was the birthplace of Universal creative team member Laura Souls, who thought it'd be a great setting for their haunt event. Little did she know it'd become a fan-favorite setting. The real town has been plagued as being haunted, with presumably occasional ghost sightings. Despite Carey not officially becoming part of the Horror Night lore until 2008, it was first introduced in 2002 as part of the popular Horror Night icon, the Caretaker, and served as being part of his terrifying backstory. We'll mention more about this sinister character later to help better understand his connection to Carey. Since that year though, it has resurfaced at the event in the form of both different scare zones and haunted houses throughout the years, being the setting for a creepy old town in Nowhereville, Ohio. Let's do a quick rundown through the years and go through the entire history of Carey, Ohio. Since Carey's first appearance in the Scream House haunted house back in 2002, it has appeared in one way, shape, or form almost every year since. What makes this interesting is that this was the first year Halloween Horror Nights was held at Islands of Adventure before eventually being brought back to Universal Studios Florida right next door. Before going any farther though, I believe it wouldn't be right to not at least mention Cindy Kane. She played an important role as the caretaker's daughter, but her beginning was very different. Originally, she was meant to be the icon for 2002's event, but was replaced due to the increased number of child abductions going on at that time. She eventually found her way worked in as a side character in Halloween Horror Nights Sweet 16. Her story only gets stranger, so stay tuned to find out more about Cindy and her connection to Carey. In 2003, Scream House Revisited would be a haunted house acting as a sequel to the previous years, this time being set to the caretaker's burned down home. The same year, the all-night die-in was centered around this year's icon, the director. It was set to an abandoned drive-in movie theater, all while being located in Carey. 1 year later introduced Hellgate Prison. While 2006 saw the return of All Night Die-In, it wasn't until 2 years later when Carey began to make a bigger splash at Horror Nights. The Schoolhouse, not to be confused with the Scream House, was the first major presence of the town. The schoolhouse constructed for this scare zone, and the most recognizable set piece built for this year, was Carey Elementary School. The following year in 2008 saw The Spawning, with a haunted house featuring creatures called Scolders which could be found in the sewers below the town. It was your job to investigate and solve the mystery. Leave It to Cleaver was one of the 8 houses featured in 2009. Set in the 1950s, a company located in Carey has been using human flesh from the homeless and criminals in their meat products. This has become one of the most recognizable and famous pieces of history to Horror Nights over the years due to its unique storyline and connection to the town. 2010 may have honestly seen the most representation of the old town so far. First, legendary troupe The Wyandotte State was centered around a group of spirit-seeking members who would go after paranormal activities. Another house inspired by this organization was featured in this year's Halloween Horror Nights, Case Files Unearthed, Legendary Truth. But I'm getting off track. The orphanage Ashes to Ashes, which heavily featured Cindy, as I mentioned earlier, also saw deep connections to the town being set at Good Harvest Orphanage, which is located in Carey. Here's a few honorable mentions from this year that should be mentioned. Zombiegeddon had Carey, Ohio briefly depicted in its Q video. Catacombs Black Death Rising featured signs in the queue bringing up Carey, France, the fictional sister town to Carey, Ohio. Lastly, Havoc Dogs of War, while at the time not being connected to Carey, will soon be. Finally making it through that intense year, now on to 2011. HR Blood and Guts Presents Holidays of Horror was tied to Lady Luck, one of the icons. This house was centered around a radio station in Carey, Ohio. 2012 saw Dead End, one of 7 featured haunted houses that year. This house took place in Carey. 1 year later we saw 2 more houses, Afterlife Death's Vengeance and Havoc Derailed, both set in the old town. 2015 may have seen once again the director's drive-in movie theater in All Night Die-In double feature, but it was in 2016 that received Lunatic's Playground 3D You Won't Stand a Chance. This house was centered all around Chance, one of the Halloween Horror Night icons. Its storyline was connected to Dogs of War from the previous years. Hive was one of the houses as part of the event in 2017. It would be centered around an infestation of killer vampires. Said vampires inside took up residence at 19 Hemingway Lane, a suburban house in Carey, Ohio. Slaughter Cinema in 2018 also is connected to the town. As you could expect from the title, it features a scene from the Carey Drive-In. Twisted Traditions as well would play an important role in the event this year, being a scare zone that takes place in the creepy old town. That brings us to today. Introducing Welcome to Scarey, Horror in the Heartland. With this being an anniversary year to Horror Nights, Universal decided to make a house that would act as a love letter to all that came before it and connect the different storylines within. Reading the official tagline for the house, in Carey, bad things just happen. No one escapes from this small town beset by an endless parade of bloodthirsty creatures and maniacs. Once you've spent your time waiting in what is the extended queue to the Men in Black attraction, you will enter the house through the side of the welcome sign, warning guests what lies beyond. This is where we will begin to see all the connections to the town from previous years found in one place. You will start by heading down the sewers to where you are greeted by the Scolders from the spawning house in years prior. Following this, you will come across the very cave from Hive. The vampires from that house would also find a place here, popping out of various boo holes to give you a good fright. You may even see some of them hanging upside down from the ceiling. The next scene takes you to Wyandotte Estate from Legendary Truth as you venture down a hallway. Following this, you will enter the attic from the mansion in Dead End. Some good scares by a couple of ghosts later, and you will find yourself at Carey Elementary. Here you may be able to hear a slowed down version of the song Pink Floyd's Another Brick on the Wall to help set the mood. A lot of creepy imagery may be seen here, including a tiger-faced child, as well as none other than Cindy Kane, a direct callback to the orphanage. Then, a reference to Holidays of Horror, guests would enter the radio station. You will pass various set pieces such as advertising posters on the wall, an applause sign, and you may even spot a bunch of props from holiday-themed horror movies. There's some good Easter eggs in here as well. Coming up, you'll arrive to Leave It to Cleaver's butcher shop, Meats Meats. You'll get a quick scare by Meaty Meats himself, followed by Sam Meats running out with a meat cleaver. Entering the meat locker, numerous body parts and corpses could be seen hanging upside down. A couple of employees who work for Meats give you one last scare before exiting the scene. The finale, while small, you may receive one of 2 endings depending on the shift change between scare actors. You will either get a prisoner from Hellgate Prison, or a soldier from Havoc Dogs of War, attempting to give you one last jump before exiting the house. You've survived. Welcome to Scarey features a combination of 11 different houses, with references to even more than that represented here. With famous scenes, quotes, and characters from the previous years of Horror Nights, it's quite clear that the creative team wanted to pay tribute to all that came before it, and they did just that with this house. Outside of the house, you may also find references to Carey, Ohio in this year's Halloween tribute store in its well-themed environment. As you exit, you even walk by the Township of Carey sign, possibly the same prop used in the Twisted Traditions scare zone back in 2018. There's plenty more callbacks and references to the town, as well as other houses I didn't mention, but that's for another time. It's quite clear that this has become a fan-favorite original concept at the event. Even team members who work at Universal may put Carey, Ohio as their hometown as a callback to its place at Halloween Horror Nights. I think as long as people continue to show their love for this creepy old town, we can continue being scared for years to come by Scarey, Ohio. I hope you enjoyed this episode of ParkTwister. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and if you enjoyed the video, then go and hit that like button. It really does help us out. If you would like to support us even farther, you can find us at ParkTwister.com, or by going and following us on Twitter and Instagram. You could also become an official Twister on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Any contribution helps out to the channel, or you can get exclusive ParkTwister merchandise. All the links are in the description below. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. I'll scare you next time.